Ladies and gentlemen, the Joe's Knows College Sports Show is back. Matt Friedman, Giacomo Imperiale, Jack Kemmler. I'm your host, Ben Shadwick. How to get that out? First, we're going to do a quick segment on college basketball. And obviously, after that, we have to talk about the massive game tonight. But guys, first, let's start it off with college basketball. So, Guac, I know you want to talk about the crazy run that Kansas State has been going on.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously today was AP Poll Day. Today was Team of the Week Day. And this disgruntled me. So Iowa State was named Team of the Week, and I didn't like it at all. It should be this team right here, the Kansas State. I mean, they're led obviously by Marquise Noel, who was named Player of the Week, rightfully so. This team, 2 huge wins. First win, they stormed down into Texas, beat number 6 Texas on the road. That was their first statement win. That's kind of like, okay, that's the normal upset. But then they go to Baylor, too, and they beat Baylor, which I think is still a tough team. I think they're not as good as they were last year, but still, nonetheless, a very impressive win. And they got a couple other bigger games coming up, which we'll get into later in the episode. I think that this team's legit, and they can make a decent tournament run. Obviously, again, led by Marquise Noel. Their second leading scorer is obviously my favorite guy from Florida, Keontae Johnson. So, Matt and Jack and Ben, too, if you guys want to comment, what have you guys seen out of this team that you guys like so far?
Yeah, I mean, just – after the first win against Texas, I thought it was an impressive win, but I wasn't necessarily sold, especially after the whole head coach debacle down there in Austin. Is
I think we got Friedman going in and out. Jack, you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, it's just the crazy run. Like Guac said, they weren't named Team of the Week, and they won 3 ranked games in a row. I know West Virginia is not really ranked anymore, but Noel to average about 27 points during the week. He's crazy. Also, the shooting guard on Kansas State. I love the duo there.
Yeah, to go back to what I was saying before, the technical difficulties. Right when Kansas State, they were beginning this run, their first big statement win was, in Austin, Texas against the Longhorns. I thought it was an impressive win, but I wasn't necessarily sold yet. You look at the head coach situation in Texas, and, that team doesn't seem to have a direction right now with all that's going on. So it was a big win by Kansas State, but I was not really sold. But going into Waco, Texas, and beating Baylor right after beating Texas, I think that was the bigger statement win, and that's what really got me sold on this team. So I think they should be ranked higher than 11, which is where they're at right now in the AP poll. But this team's definitely someone to look out for, especially with these big games coming up, because they're red hot, and red hot teams in college basketball generally bring it home.
Yeah, and real quick, not to mention, they had one of the best offensive games in the country against Texas. They scored 116 points in college, which is not really a normality, especially against the number 6 team in the country. I just think that paired with the Baylor, which shows how legit this team is.
Yeah, we're going to be getting to Kansas State with the very first game of our top 5 games of the week. So we got number 11 Kansas State heading over to number 17 TCU, who we will be talking a lot about later on in the episode. But right now we'll stick to college basketball. So Friedman, who do you have in this one?
In this one, I mean, I got to stay consistent. I'm going to go Kansas State. 2 big road wins in the Big 12. I think they'll stay consistent. TCU, we touched on them way early in the year. I think as a group, we thought they would surprise some people. They've surprised some people in the opposite way. They haven't really been as good as we thought they would be. So I think Kansas State will storm into TCU, and they'll take that one.
Jock?
Yeah, Matt took most of the words out of my mouth. I'm going to go Kansas State here as well. Mike Miles Jr., who I picked as one of my dark horses to win the Naismith. I mean, he's just been one of the more inefficient shooters in the country this year. He's not looked good at all, nothing like his tournament self last year. And I just don't like the defense that this team has played, giving up a lot of points this year. So I'm going to take Kansas State in this one as well.
Jack?
Yeah, TCU, they're on a little bit of a run here, so now they're getting higher in the AP poll. But Kansas State, their last 3 games, they just played amazing. And let's keep it real, TCU basketball team is going to be partying a little too hard after that football win.
Oh, once again, we're going to get to that. Jack giving you a sneak peek at some of his takes. But, yeah, I mean, guys, the record is undeniable. I think Kansas State has been playing great offensively. So, yeah, give me Kansas State in this one as well. Next game we have number 6 UConn heading over to number 25 Marquette. Friedman.
Yeah, I mean, once again, I'm going to take the favorite in this one, the higher seed. I'm going to take the UConn Huskies. This has been a big topic on this podcast, and I'm a very big advocate for UConn. I think they had a tough stumble against Xavier and against Providence, 2 tough road Big East games. But I think after regaining their footing, they'll head into Milwaukee and take this one from Marquette.
Jock?
I mean, I'm gonna roll with Marquette here. I'm gonna take the home favorite. I think they're 4 for 4 out of their last 4 games, obviously led by Cam Jones. I think, again, I've touched on it. The 2 teams that I've called fraudulent from the beginning are the Virginia Cavaliers and the UConn Huskies. I don't really like either team this year. I think UConn, again, they'll be a decent team. I don't see anything special. Marquette's been on a little bit of a hot streak. I think this is the game where they finally get out of that 20. They win this big game at home. They can maybe get into top 20, top 15, around there. So, yeah, give me Marquette in this one.
Jack?
Yeah, it's 2 really offensive teams, and I mean, I know Will's not here, but me and him, we love Marquette. We love this Marquette team. I don't think any of these teams are overrated. I think it's just going to be a good game between 2 good teams. So I'm actually going to take Marquette, even though I was backing them up a couple weeks ago against Guac, UConn, but I like Marquette in this one.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I don't think either of them are overrated. I think they're both underrated, I would say. I think UConn is arguably a top 5 team. I think Marquette is top 20, maybe even top 15 if you want to go that far. Marquette, like you said, very, very good offensively, but I think UConn is just too good. I know they're traveling over to Marquette, but I got to take the Huskies in this one. And TCU makes another debut, and we're not even into college football yet. Number 17 TCU at number 10 Texas. Friedman.
Yeah, I understand. I picked against them in the first game, but I'm going to take TCU here. I touched on it before. I just think this Texas basketball team has no real direction after the firing of Coach Chris Beard. So I'm going to take TCU just because I think this Longhorns basketball team is in a bit of disarray after the head coaching change. So, yeah, I'll take the Horned Frogs.
Jock?
I'm going to have to disagree with Matt here again a little bit. I think I can't see Texas losing another one. I get with the whole coaching change. May take a little bit of adjustments. So Marcus Carr is just unbelievable. One of my favorite players to watch this year. I can't see them losing again after just getting stomped on by Kansas State. So I'm going to take Texas here again. Home court advantage is a big, big deal in college basketball, and I like the home team here, so I'm going to take the Texas Longhorns.
Jack?
Yeah, Texas are supposed to be like a very offensive team. They've been scoring a lot of points all year, but since this coach got fired, they scored 56 points against Oklahoma State. I don't love that at all, so I'll take TCU.
Yeah, I know I've taken all chalk picks up until this point, but yeah, I'm going to take the Longhorns again. Like you said, Texas is a very good offensive team. I think they are a very underrated defensive team, and I think the talent on that team is just so undeniable. I know all the coaching drama, the coaching changes that are going on, but I think Texas bounces back and gets a victory here against TCU. Our second to last game, number 14 Iowa State, heading over to number 2 Kansas. Friedman.
This Jayhawk basketball team might be the best in the country.
Yeah.
I mean, going into Lawrence, Kansas is probably the most difficult atmosphere to deal with as an away team in all of college basketball. So for me, it's pretty easy. I'll take the Jayhawks.
Jock?
I'm the same way with Matt here. I think that the difference between this Iowa State team and the Kansas State team, Kansas State had 2 big wins, both on the road. I feel like they showed that they're a little bit legit. Iowa State, to me, was always just bouncing around the top 25. They had their one big rank win that kind of pushed them up a little bit. I'm all over Kansas in this game. I think they may win by double digits at home in this game. I'm all over Kansas. Give me Kansas.
Jack?
Yeah, I love Kansas as well, especially at the field house. I mean, Grady Dick, Jalen Wilson, they're playing their best ball. Number 2 team in the country. I think if you put them up against Houston right now, I think they take it. So
yeah.
I definitely have them beating Iowa State here.
Yeah, guys, there's nothing I could say that you already haven't said. Kansas is a better basketball team. They're at home. Give me the Jayhawks. Simple as that. Next game, the last game, also number 4 Alabama heading over to number 15 Arkansas. Friedman.
So it's been a bit of a letdown this year for Crimson Tide fans on the football department, and they're having a great year with college basketball. But I think this is where the red hot Crimson Tide go down because, I mean, this is big time college basketball. Arkansas, I mean, their fans are going to be packing the stadium. I just home court advantage in college basketball. It really never fails, and these are 2 very good teams. So that whoever gets the slight edge is going to win, and I think that slight edge is going to come from the crowd for Arkansas. So I'll take the Razorbacks.
Jock?
I'm the same way. Arkansas picked up that, in my opinion, a pretty big rank win, holding off Mizzou at home. I'm all over Arkansas in this game. I think Alabama finally gets stumped here. Great offensive team. Yeah, I think the Arkansas defense is going to be too much for this Alabama team. I touched on that. Arkansas is one of my favorite teams in the country to watch this year. I think this is the one that's going to get them right. Again, this is exactly where I think Arkansas is going to be all season, within the top 15 to top 7, I'd say. They'll be in and out of the top 10 a lot. And so I'm all over Arkansas in this game.
Jack?
Yeah, there's one college basketball team I hate this year. I hate Auburn. Like, they're just not good. A lot of people underrate them. I see them talking, in the public that Auburn, they're going to keep rising up, but I think they're horrible, and they somehow beat Arkansas by 20. I'm not going to get past that. I'm not looking past that. I'm taking Alabama.
And Freeman brought it up, and so did Jock. Those are two really good points. The home court advantage obviously means so much. I think Arkansas is really going to pack the stands, and Jock also brought up the defense of Arkansas. I think it is undeniable. I don't think it's talked about enough, and I really see it shutting down Alabama. I think Arkansas is very underrated, ranked at number 15. I think Alabama's a little bit overrated at number 4. I don't know if I'd have them in my top 4. So yeah, give me the Razorbacks in this one, and I'm pretty sure that is going to do it for the college basketball segment. But before we end it off, Guac, you want to make a quick comment on how Rutgers is doing so far?
Yeah, I mean, we had Mr. Berger on a couple weeks ago. Rutgers beat the number 1 team in the country. Again, it's official. Rutgers owns Purdue, especially at home. The rack was jumping. I mean, and then they picked up that road win in Maryland, too. Rutgers, 2 impressive wins. If they don't lose to Iowa the other day, they're a ranked team right now. They were just ranked. I believe that they were 26th or 27th, just like one of the final top 2 teams that weren't ranked. But again, if Iowa really had their breakout game, I don't think that they're really that great of a team, but they sure showed that they were decent against Rutgers. If they don't lose that game, they're a ranked team, and Rutgers could be a dangerous tournament team come time.
So guys, anything to add on Rutgers before we move on?
Nah, nothing really. I mean,
yeah, they could be a dangerous tournament team, but every time they win these big games, they always lose the next one, so they can never get ranked. It's so funny.
Every time.
I don't see them making a 6-game run and winning the whole tournament. Not even close.
I think that's going to do it for college basketball. And guys, I think there's a game on in a couple hours that some people are talking about, so we might as well talk about it a little bit. The College Football National Championship up next.
And we are back with the college football part and segment of this show. Once again, I'm Giacomo Imperiale, joined by Matt Friedman, Ben Chadwick, and Jack Kemler. As Ben noted on a little bit, we have a somewhat big game tonight. Just kidding. The biggest game in all of college football. We have the national championship game. But before we touch on that, we had some really breaking news earlier in the day today, and I think we all want to just talk about it real quick before we jump into the college football championship game. And that's the fact that Blake Corum will be staying at Michigan for 1 more year. Guys, you want to comment on that? I'll kick it to you first.
For Blake Corum and for the Michigan Wolverines, I love the move because, Blake Corum, he was a Heisman candidate. Some believe he would have won the Heisman if he was healthy for that Ohio State game. I think it's a great move for him personally. I think Michigan, obviously, they're going to love to have their guy back again at running back this year. But for Donovan Edwards, I mean, he's looking like a superstar in the making, especially against Ohio State, especially in that Big Ten championship. And if I'm him, I'm frustrated, and I'm even looking to transfer because he could be a day 1 starter, an absolute stud on almost any other big-time program in the country. Yet, he's got the best running back in college football, arguably, coming back to play another year. So, big win for Blake Corum, big win for Michigan. But if I'm Donovan Edwards, I'm not feeling too happy right about now.
Ben?
Yeah, I mean, Freeman brought it up. It's awesome for Michigan that he's coming back. For Blake Corum, I would imagine some type of NIL deal is out there, which is helping him stay. I'm not going to say I know for sure, but I mean, that has to be in play. You're not just going to give up a first round contract in the NFL just like that, just to play one more year with your guys. Yeah, you brought up Donovan Edwards. He could really go anywhere. I know he already announced Michigan is where he will be staying. So that's great for them. That is an awesome tandem. But also something that might play into this, Guac, is Blake Corum is staying. So does that mean that we know a little bit about the Jim Harbaugh sweepstakes? Because there's a lot of talk about Harbaugh leaving Michigan, going back to the NFL. He had a lot of success there before. Will he go back? If Corum is staying, would he really be staying if his head coach is leaving the same year? So, I mean, I want to throw that out there. I could throw it to Jack. I could throw it back to you, Guac. I think that is something very interesting to watch here with Corum.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. I don't think he's leaving then, because to me, this shows his star player is staying one more year. So to me, I think he's just going to stay one more year and then go back to the NFL, because I don't think he wants to stay in college. Obviously, Ben mentioned a lot of success in the NFL. We've all seen it. But I think his star running back staying. I can't see him leaving this year, especially after this. So, Jack, I'll kick it back over to you.
Well, yeah, Michigan's O-line, they won the award. I forget what it's called, but they won the best O-line award for college football. Most of their players are staying, so you get a fourth-year Blake Corum. That team, for me, looks like the favorite next year, especially if J.J. McCarthy does something in the offseason, gets himself a little better. I like him to be the favorite to start off.
Matt, you want to comment on the Harbaugh stuff real quick?
Yeah, and so if you're looking at Harbaugh's status with Michigan, he has done a phenomenal job. He has straight outcoached Ryan Day the last two meetings between Ohio State and Michigan. And I mean, let's be honest, before those last two meetings, he was looking like one of the worst Michigan coaches we've seen in a long time, right? In that COVID year, I mean, he was looking at a losing record, about to lose to Rutgers. He was looking like he was about to go out of the door. And then he turns it around. He beats Michigan. He beats Ohio State, the next year and the year after that. So I think that this could be somewhat of a last hurrah for Harbaugh and at Michigan. You look at the recruiting classes that Michigan has been bringing in, doesn't seem to be on par with the teams that they want to be contending with. I mean, Ohio State in their own conference. And then you look at Georgia, Bama, the other national powerhouses that Michigan expects to compete with. Their recruiting classes are just not on the same level. So he's got his big-time quarterback coming back. He's returning most of his O-line. He's got Corum coming back. I think this is really the last year where Harbaugh is going to make a big push with Michigan. And then after that, I think he could be off to the NFL.
Yeah, and I think Corum means so much to this offense. Obviously, we saw them play TCU without Corum. Someone make the argument, including me, that if Corum was playing, we would be watching them in a couple hours, seeing Michigan versus Georgia. But, I mean, yeah, you talk about Heisman, you want to talk about most outstanding player. If he didn't get hurt, he would have been my pick over Caleb Williams. I mean, just most outstanding player. We're not talking about value at quarterback, even if we are talking about value. I mean, he is the most valuable player to Georgia, more than McCarthy. Even though he's a running back, it's a whole different game in college, and he just carries not only that entire offense, that entire team. Like, that entire team was led by Blake Corum, and when he went down, they lost their first ever game. And I know it's TCU. I know they're on a hot streak, but I still think Corum is just the backbone of this team. And, I mean, next year, they could be an absolute house next year in college football. I expect them to be a number 2 or number 3 at the most for the rankings, and I think they're another lock to make the playoffs, in my opinion.
Definitely. And Jack, you want to throw anything else out real quick before we move it on?
I mean, John Harbaugh was amazing for the 49ers, but I don't really see him going like the Colts or like the Broncos, like trying to like revitalize those franchises. I think he stays one more year with this very talented Michigan team.
Definitely. And if there's nothing else, no other comments, I think we're going to move it on to the Natty, the national championship game, biggest game on all of college football. So I think we're going to start it off. We each have one key player I think that we want to go over. And I think we're going to start with Jack. Jack, you want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with who I think is probably the best player on the field. It's Quentin Johnson. I mean, he's definitely the best receiver this year. I know Jackson Lajiba is like skillfully the best, but this guy, he's healthy. So he's really just the best right now. And you talk about his release. His release is the best in college football. He has great catch and traffic. He has great route running. He played amazing against Michigan. He had that big 70-yard TD to really just turn around that game for TCU, just keep them going when Michigan was really fighting towards the end. And, I mean, for draft-wise, like for comparison, I really compare him to Davante Adams because Davante Adams, the best release in the game. I mean, his catch and traffic is amazing, and that's really what Quentin Johnson is doing this year. I really like him in the draft, even though I would take Jackson Lajiba over him. I really just think that Quentin Johnson, when he gets off the line, the cornerback is not near him. And right now in the NFL, Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Davante Adams, that's what they do best. They get these releases amazing, and it's really changing for the wide receiver position.
Definitely. Any comments, Matt, Ben, on what Jack has said so far?
Yeah,
I'll go first.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, Quentin Johnson looks like he's going to be maybe the most impactful player for TCU in this entire game. But I also want to point out on the other side of the ball, Kelee Ringo did not really show very well against Ohio State last week. I mean, I believe that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in all of college football. I mean, we saw what he did in the first half against Georgia. And then after that, you even saw Emeka Egbuka and Julian Fleming start to get their legs under them in that national semifinal. So, I mean, you're looking at Quentin Johnson, who's arguably the best wide receiver in this 2022 or in this 2023 draft, But you pair that with a struggling Kelee Ringo. I mean, we've seen collapses like this by DBs such as Sean Wade a couple of years ago for Ohio State. He was absolutely horrific. Devonta Smith went for 200-plus yards against them in the national championship. I mean, I don't want to say 200-plus, but we could see a very explosive game from Quentin Johnson, especially against a very struggling Kelee Ringo.
Ben, you got anything else?
Yeah, I don't want to give away too much of my keys to victory for Georgia and TCU, honestly. But, I mean, Quentin Johnson is wide receiver 1 in the draft, in my opinion. He's just a go up there and get it kind of guy. I mean, I'm talking Julio Jones, Mike Evans at the college level. So if he gets a single one-on-one matchup, I know Georgia's DBs are great. Didn't play so hot against Ohio State, but I know their track record is very good. But in terms of just size, no one really matches up with Quentin Johnson. And in terms of just leaping ability, their vert, Quentin Johnson gets a one-on-one, and it is wraps. I mean, it is a touchdown immediately. And it's going to make it really easy for Max Duggan. It's going to really open up the run game, the rest of the passing offense. So Quentin Johnson just means so much to this TCU offense, and it's going to be so fun to watch later on.
Definitely. And with that, I think we'll move it on to our next player. Matt, you want to go next with your key player for this game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most impactful players in this game is going to be Brock Bowers for Georgia. I mean, you look at his recent, he was highly regarded as one of the best tight ends in the country, and he has kind of been missing as of late. I mean, only 81 yards against LSU, only 64 against Ohio State, and most of them coming late, on those heavy passing drives. But we haven't really seen him make much of an impact, as he has earlier on in this year. So I think that with Ohio State's, Ohio State had a terrific linebacking core. They kept him in check. They used true freshman Sonny Styles in the semifinal, and he really did a good job on Bowers. But I don't think TCU has the guys to stack up against Bowers necessarily like Ohio State did. So I think you really could see Bowers go for a huge game. So I think if Georgia plays through him, and that's really their true identity, is playing through those big tight ends, Bowers and Washington. If you see Bowers have a big game, Georgia's going to run away with this one very quickly.
Ben, Jack, anything else to add to what Matt has said?
No, I mean, once again, I'm just going to get into my keys to victory for Georgia. So I think we'll just let that one ride.
All right, Ben, I'll throw it over to you then. You want to talk about your key player for this game tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the best player in college football. That's what I'm going to talk about right here. Best defensive player in college football. I'm sorry, because okay. I just called Blake Corum the best offensive player. So best defensive player in college football, Jalen Carter. There's no other way around it. In terms of prospect, we have not seen a better interior D-line prospect since Quentin Williams. I don't want to hear Javon Kinlaw. I don't want to hear anyone else. Jalen Carter has been unreal. And you're seeing him in this Tennessee game. He tore apart the Tennessee line. He tore apart the LSU line. He tore apart the Mississippi State line. I know those aren't the greatest lines in the country, but those are still SEC schools with SEC offensive lines that he is just going through like a hot knife through butter. I mean, Jalen Carter is the guy. And you want to talk about run defense too. I mean, you just watched it right there. One of the best run defenders in the country. Linebackers, edge rushers, interior D linemen, all of them. He is arguably the best run defender in the country. One of the best pass rushers in the country. By far, the best interior D lineman pass rusher in the country. I mean, this is going to get out of hand, and this is not who I'm comparing him to. But you want to talk about his run defense and his pass rush. I mean, it's like, again, I'm not comparing him to this guy, but Aaron Donald in the NFL, if you just kind of the collegiate version of him. Again, I'm not going to call him the greatest defensive player of all time because that's who I think Aaron Donald is. But, I mean, just the combination of those two skills, which are pretty much the only two skills you need to be an incredible interior D lineman, he does them to a T. And TCU's offensive line, not the greatest. Their right guard has been a point of interest for many D-lines across the country. And now Jalen Carter gets to wreak havoc on TCU. I'm expecting multiple sacks. I'm expecting multiple tackles for loss. Jalen Carter will have a day against the TCU offensive line.
Jack, Ben, anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to. I want to jump in here. I'm riding the Jalen Carter train. I think he is. He could be the most important player in this entire game. And to be completely honest with you, I'm not really sure what we're going to get here. TCU plays a very fast-paced offense. They hurried up a lot. We saw Ohio State do that in the national semifinal, and Jalen Carter didn't have much of an impact. He seemed very gassed. He wasn't able to be as effective because of how quickly their offense was moving up and down the field. So Jalen Carter, undoubtedly, he is the best interior defensive lineman we've seen since Quentin Williams. I'm with you on that 100%. And also, Ohio State's offensive line is a completely different animal than TCU's offensive line. So I think Jalen Carter, he still is playing a very quick offense, but it's a way worse offensive line. I really don't know what we're going to get tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gassed and taken out of and his effect on the game is not felt as much, or I couldn't be surprised if he wrecks this game and wins it for Georgia. But I agree. He's really one of the biggest players to watch in this national championship.
Jack?
Yeah, and you talk about like the NFL now. I mean, even our teams, the Jets and the Giants, Dexter Lawrence and Quentin Williams were such great defensive presences for this team, for the Jets and the Giants, and even Chris Jones, who's been amazing for the Chiefs. A guy like Jalen Carter for the Bears for that first pick, I think would be perfect for them. Start up that defense, build around him. An interior defensive lineman is so underrated these days, and it really shows to Jalen Carter.
Definitely. And anybody else got anything to add real quick before I take over on my player?
Yeah, I mean, Freeman brought up the Ohio State offense, which I think is, I'm going to say it, miles better than the TCU offense. I mean, you want to talk about pace, you want to talk about quarterback, you want to talk about receivers, you want to talk about O-line. They do everything better than TCU. And I mean, we're not going to get into this now, but you want to talk prospect-wise, he didn't have an incredible game against Ohio State. That's something to look at. But just for this game and just against TCU, it's a pretty safe bet that Jalen Carter is going to have a day. He's going to wreak havoc on TCU, and they really have to stop him if they have any chance of winning this game, because if not, Max Duggan will be under pressure all night long.
And Ben, you just said the name of my guy, so I'll move into my guy. I think he'll be the most valuable player on the field tonight. I think it's the best quarterback on the field tonight. I think it's Max Duggan. I mean, you look at what he did against Michigan. To me, the key for him isn't going to be throwing the ball. It's going to be rushing him. Obviously, Duggan against Michigan had 15 attempts running the ball at 57 yards, and he torched that Michigan. He torched that Michigan defense, man. 51 points with a 50% completion rate for 225 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, I'll say it time and time again, I'm not the biggest fan of Stetson Bennett. He is what he is, as Matt, I think, mentioned in a couple of days. He's not going to win you games, but he's not going to lose you games. And Duggan is the guy that's going to win you games. He's a lot more mobile than Bennett. I think that, obviously, having Quentin Johnson on his side is going to be huge for them in this national championship game. And, again, I don't want to get into my keys to victory too much, but I think if TCU is going to win this game, Duggan is going to have to put on a day, and I think he's definitely capable of doing it after what we have seen against his Michigan team.
See, I think everything you just said was spot on, except for the one thing. Stetson Bennett, I was not the biggest fan of him, to be completely honest with you, going into this postseason. But you look at the way that he stepped up late in the game against Ohio State. I'll be the first to tell you that Ohio State secondary, absolute joke. The scheme isn't there. The talent really isn't there. But Stetson Bennett stepped up and he made the plays. He took his team down the field. That's no game manager. That's a big-time player stepping up and making big-time plays in the biggest moment of his entire career, arguably. So to say that he is a game manager, more often than not, sure, but he definitely can win Georgia some games. I mean, we saw it on New Year's Eve against Ohio State. So Stetson Bennett, I don't think he is a superstar quarterback, but I think we're underrating his ability to, really perform in the clutch.
Ben, Jack, anything else to add real quick?
No, I mean, once again, I'm just going to get into my keys of victory. So, yeah.
All right. So, you know what? I think you've mentioned a couple times. So, we'll start with you, Ben. So, I believe we're going to do our Georgia keys to victories first. So, Ben, you want to talk about your keys to victory for Georgia first?
Yeah, just play Georgia football. I mean, there's not much else to it. I mean, they are just the better team coming into this game, if we're all going to be completely honest with ourselves. So just play some Georgia football. Also, Georgia's offensive line is incredible. That they have played awesome this year. The TCU defensive line, not good at all. I don't think anyone realizes that, but the TCU defensive line and edge rushing, in terms of pass rushing at least, is not great. And also something to note, Stetson Bennett is arguably the greatest quarterback in the country when not under pressure, when protected, no pressure in his face. So with an incredible Georgia offensive line, a horrible TCU defensive line, once again, all Georgia has to do is play their football, play like they're the better team, because they are, and that'll be an easy path to victory for Georgia. I mean, there's not much else besides just maybe double Quentin Johnson. I mean, he's really the only weapon, the only really guy you should be scared of if you're Georgia. So just make sure you're not getting beat by Quentin Johnson. Make sure your O-line is playing like how they have the entire year. And this should be an easy win for the Bulldogs.
Matt, you want to add on to that real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. I really do agree. I think the key to victory for the Georgia Bulldogs is don't get cute. I mean, if we're looking at the offensive side of the ball, TCU cannot stop anybody. I mean, they did win that game against Michigan. Michigan ran through that defense, and you saw that Georgia offense and how they dominated the Buckeyes. So, and that was with Darnell Washington out and with Brock Bowers not being very effective. So when you look at this Georgia Bulldogs offense, they're gonna have Bowers be way more effective. They have AD, they have McConkey, and I'm just not seeing how TCU is gonna stop this team. They've been a terrible defense all year. Georgia can't get cute. Just continue to do what they do best. Play through your tight ends, play through Brock Bowers. He's a superstar when he's involved in the game plan. But I think on the defensive side of the ball, Georgia should be slightly scared. I think Georgia, if they just play their brand of football, like Ben said, they should win pretty easily. But look at this Georgia defense, and they got caught, on an island, and not in a good way, against Marvin Harrison, against Julian Fleming, against Emeka Egbuka. And that led to some very explosive plays for Ohio State when they had their guys healthy. So you look at Quentin Johnson, he's the same caliber receiver as Marvin Harrison is. You cannot let him take your DBs, one-on-one. You saw what happened. Marvin Harrison had 100 yards and a touchdown in the first half. Quentin Johnson's going to get that in a snap if you don't take him into account, especially when TCU does not have any top caliber weapons. So I think just contain the run by Max Duggan, and then Quentin Johnson, you just got to keep him in the back of your head if you're Kirby Smart. And other than that, I think just play Georgia football, like Ben said.
Definitely. Jack, you want to add on to that real quick?
Yeah, I feel like they said everything for me, but I just think the main purpose is for Stetson Bennett to let the play develop. Because if you let the play develop, Brock Bowers, he's going to be open. I can guarantee that. So really just pound the tight end all game on the offensive side. And on the defensive side, just stop Quentin Johnson. That's the only X factor part right now for the TCU offense. And you saw it against Michigan. So if Keelan Ringo could wake up, these DBs could wake up, they could game plan against him. I just see an easy Bulldog win.
Definitely. And for me, guys, I think you guys have said it all, so I'm not going to really comment much on this. But, Ben, I think you should just switch it over to the TCU side for their keys to victory, and I'm going to go first here because I have a couple things I want to touch on. Obviously, Georgia, we all agree, is the much better football team going into this game. But for me, the way TCU is going to win this game is going to be in the shootout, and I think that's the only way they can win this game is if they put up a lot of points real fast. I think Duggan is going to have another miraculous throwing game. Quentin Johnson's going to have a lot of yards. But I believe I touched on it when I talked about Max Duggan at the beginning. I think he's going to have to run the ball a lot. I can see a lot of getting out to the edge, not that interior lineman with Javon Carter in that inside. I think he's going to have to go outside the pocket and have a big day running the ball if they want any chance to win. And again, I can't see – if this is a low-scoring game, Georgia's going to beat them by a lot. But if this is a shootout, I think this game could be very close and could develop into something that we can talk about for a while. Matt, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just, I seem pretty confident on Georgia winning, but I think there are some paths to victory for TCU. I mean, this has been an incredible run. I think Max Duggan, I think this overall team's toughness it's something that can't be understated, especially in a game like this where both teams are going to have adversity. And TCU has been through way more adversity than any of these Georgia Bulldogs have been. So I think Max Duggan, I think he is a better quarterback in the clutch. I was just complimenting how great Stetson Bennett has been in big moments, but I think Max Duggan is the hotter quarterback in the clutch. He's doing it more himself and not necessarily – he doesn't feel the need to use his weapons or his lack of weapons. But I think Max Duggan running the ball would be really the biggest way that TCU can move the ball against Georgia. And I think Quentin Johnson needs to have a stellar game. We saw what Marvin Harrison was doing in the first half in the Ohio State game. Quentin Johnson needs to get that in the first half and then mirror it in the second half. He's got to have 200-plus yards and a touchdown or two if TCU wants to win this game. I think there's some possibility there, but I think they really need to have a stellar performance for TCU to upset Georgia.
Definitely. Jack, you want to talk about your keys to victory?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're going to talk about Quentin Johnson and how he needs to blow up the game. But for the run part of the game offensively, I mean, they should really just be game planning around the interior defense because how good Jalen Carter is and that D-line. If they game plan, run the ball outside with Keandre Miller if he plays, but still, DeMercado is still a very good running back. They could get a good amount of rushing yards and open up the pass game for the TCU offense. And on the defensive side, I feel like last game we can all agree that if J.J. McCarthy doesn't throw one more pick six, then it's Michigan's game. Like that's all on J.J. McCarthy. So for TCU again, they should really try and get one turnover, maybe even two, and two turnovers could totally change this game for TCU, just like it did against Michigan.
Definitely. And Ben, you're going to go last. You want to touch on your keys to victory?
Yeah, I mean, Jack said it perfectly. Forcing mistakes is one of the ways that they are going to win this game. I know Georgia offensively and even defensively doesn't make many mistakes, but that's what's going to need to happen if they want to win this game. They force mistakes against Michigan. They're going to have to force mistakes against Georgia. I mean, some can make the argument, should TCU even be here? Obviously, it was a very controversial reffing game, so maybe TCU isn't even better than Michigan, but hey, they're here, and now they have to win the game. And we brought it up a little bit before. Like Freeman said, the Georgia DBs were cooked, just roasted by Ohio State. I know it's C.J. Stroud. I know it's that receiving core. But still, I mean, you got Keely Ringo, one of the top corner prospects in the draft, just getting annihilated. Also, Kamari Lassiter, Javon Bullard, Malachi Starks, all those guys had arguably their worst game of their careers in the last game. We're talking about the college football playoffs that you're playing like this. They have to step up or else Quentin Johnson will have an absolute field day. But yeah, once again, you got to force mistakes and you got to find a way to get Quentin Johnson the ball as well as some Max Duggan magic. I mean, Max Duggan needs to make some miracles happen tonight. That is the only way they win this game. You can force all the mistakes you want. You could toss it up to Johnson all you want. But Max Duggan needs to come up in the clutch. If they win this game, best believe it will not be by a TCU blowout. It is going to be down to the wire if it is TCU's ball game. And Duggan is going to have to come up big in those clutch moments. That's the only way I see TCU win this game.
And if that's it, guys, I think we're going to almost wrap it up here. I think we're going to go into our game predictions on who we think is going to win this game. So I think I'm going to go first here. I don't want to take the chalk pick. I'm going to take TCU. I'll tell you straight up. I think I would love to see Duggan make something happen tonight. Again, me and Walter, who's not here today, both Florida fans, we do not like Georgia at all. I would love to see them lose this game. I think they have a chance. I think that small chance is enough for me. That I think TCU could win this game if a lot of things go their way today. I'll have Jack go next. Jack, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm going to back up Guac, even though I never like to. I'm going to take the Frogs as well, just because they're so hot, and this is such a weird college football year. One of the weirdest years we had, and it's going to be a weird championship game, definitely a shootout, and Georgia's defense just gets blown up by Quentin Johnson and even the run game. I'm taking TCU 35-31.
Love that. Matt, you want to go next? You can see the look on his face already.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really read into the look on my face too much. I really think this is Georgia's ball game to lose, so I'm going to take the Bulldogs here. I believe the national championship game was actually played 8 o'clock on New Year's Eve between Ohio State and Georgia. It was clear that those were the two best teams in the country at that moment. So I think Georgia won the national championship game right then and there. I think they will handle business against TCU, but I think it will be a little bit closer than people anticipate, because I'm really not a fan of this Georgia Bulldogs secondary coming off of a very poor performance against Ohio State. And then Quentin Johnson, as we've been hammering home this entire episode, one of the best receivers in the country. He's really going to have a day against this Georgia Bulldogs secondary to keep it close, but I'll still take the Bulldogs to win the national championship.
Ben, you want to go?
Yeah, I mean, Georgia's a better team. Like I've talked about it so much so far. TCU is not the second best college football team out there. That is pretty clear. I think we can all agree on that. And just to say that they're going to beat this absolute powerhouse that Kirby Smart has created down there is wild. I mean, Jock, I know you mentioned it. Oh, you hate Georgia. I don't want to see them win either. I will be rooting for TCU the whole way. But they are not going to win this football game. I mean, it is as simple as that. I hope they do. I hope Duggan pulls something outrageous. But in my head, it's just so logical. It doesn't make sense not to pick Georgia. I got to go with the Bulldogs in this one. Like I said, Stetson Bennett will be protected. He will be facing no pressure, and he thrives under those conditions. Jalen Carter going to have a day. He was my guy to watch in this game. So give me Georgia 34-24 at the end of this one.
And Ben, I believe you just touched on it right there. I think our last segment, we're going to go into our score predictions. So, Ben, you're going to have Georgia winning 34-24, if I believe.
34-24. That's what I like.
All right, so we'll just go back in reverse order. Matt, you want to give your score prediction with the Georgia win there?
Yeah, I'm going to give it to Georgia 38-31. I think a lot of points will be scored. Two struggling defenses, but Georgia will take it home.
Jack, you want to give yours?
Yeah, I have TCU 35-31.
Wow. I'm surprised that nobody went a little bit higher. Give me TCU 48-45. I think they kick a game-winning field goal to win the game at the end. I think it is just an offensive powerhouse. I think both defenses do not show out. And that's really all I got to say. I think it's going to be a very, very explosive game. And I believe that if there's nothing else that anybody else wants to mention, I'll
just throw this out there. I think a 48-45 TCU victory might be the greatest college football game I've ever watched.
You know what?
It's got to be. I mean,
I would stamp both. Yeah, I'm assuming a 48-45 game-winning field goal. That's got to be a magical game. But on top of that, just TCU's story of losing record last year, Sonny Dykes coming out of nowhere with this Horned Frogs team. And if they somehow beat the big bad Georgia Bulldogs, who are trying to defend their title, I mean, come on, that's storybook stuff. So that would have to be the best game of all time.
And definitely. And I believe that'll wrap it up for our college football and college basketball segments today. Make sure to follow us on St. Joe's Media Sports TikTok. We upload all of our clips on there. And I believe that'll wrap it up. I'm Giacomo Imperiale, joined by Matt Freeman, Ben Chadwick, and Jack Kemmler. Thanks for watching.